Here we go.
Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk coming at you live after the holidays. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope things are rocking along and your world's clicking like it ought to be. I know this. I'm pretty fired up about 2025. Got some fun projects in my headlights, and it's going to be a really good year. I'm just pretty pumped up about it. It's people, whenever they ask me how I'm doing, I always say, still leading a pretty cool life. And that's the truth. One of the highlights, I hope this year in March, I turned 70. I'll tell you what, I don't know, any of you guys that have got some, they're long in the tooth and maybe got a few years on you. Hello, Jeremy Day, and hello, Bill Schrum. Good to see you guys. Glad you're joining in. There's John Dyer checking in from over in the Carolinas. Jim Allen, I owe you a response, and I'm getting to it. I've kind of had my head down, and if I'm not in the field here lately, which I've been a lot, I've got my head down getting the next issue of Pond Boss out, plus I'm trying to finish up 2 books that I've written and trying to get that knocked out. So I've been a little remiss in answering my emails. Hello, Mike Cottrell. Good to see you. And Jim, hey, man, I want to call you tomorrow if you're going to be around because got some really got a fun project, and we're going to get to age a few fish and help you build that database that you're looking for. So I got a few topics to talk about. You guys pitch some questions at me, and we'll get into that. John Dyer's got it. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like and share this video to your timeline. You're going to be eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. So whenever Leanne gets back in the office, she was out sick today, we'll have a drawing, and we'll see who gets the next hat. Hello, Virgil Meyer. I bet you're kind of snowed in up in Iowa. And Jim, are you snowed in Kentucky? Or let's see, you're getting ready to hit the road here in a few days. All right, so I got several things I want to talk about. One thing I want to talk about is niches. Niches are really pretty interesting. Like with Jim Allen lives on a really nice neighborhood lake in outside of Louisville, Kentucky. Yep, I figured you had a lot of snow and ice. Everybody in the Midwest seems to have a whole lot of snow and ice. And ours is coming tomorrow night and Thursday, which, of course, in Texas, if there's any white stuff on the ground, everything gets shut down around here because we don't know how to deal with it. Don't know how to manage it. Don't know how to navigate through it, because we don't get it. If it snows once a year, that's pretty normal, but it never sticks. So they're calling for, hello, Deborah Corlew. They're calling for 2 to 5 inches. So we'll see. I know my wife's not watching. She'd bust me for drinking wine live with you guys. Niches. Let's talk about that. When you look at a pond and a lake, look at it in it's a third dimension. The fish have the ability to go up and down. We don't. When we live terrestrially, even though we live a 3D life, we don't have that benefit of being able just to hold our breath and rise off the top. Where a fish can do that. And when you're looking at managing a pond, understanding the different niches is pretty darn important. Majority of the fish production goes on in what's called the littoral zone. So the littoral zone is that shallow area that sits above the thermocline where most of the primary productivity goes on. It's where plants grow. It's where fish live. It's the area along the shore where you see the bushy pondweed coming up, or you see shoreline plants growing. So that's the littoral zone. And then you've got open water zones. What lives out there? Largemouth bass typically don't. They might stroll out there to go get something to eat or go patrol and see what's going on, but that's not where they tend to hang out, and that's not where plants grow. That's hybrid stripers or white bass, shad, threadfin shad especially. Now, then there's the bottom niche. Who lives on the bottom? Gizzard shad live on the bottom. So do carp. Some of the different fishes that you'll end up seeing. So, yeah, Fred Bingaman, youngster. Easy for you to say, mister. I get that. That's good. So when you're managing your lake or your pond, think about ways to fill the different niches. Like, for example, I'm working on a very cool lake that I mentioned the last time I broadcast about 3 weeks ago. It's about an hour from my house. It's a 100-acre lake. And what's pretty cool about that is not all the niches are filled. So this gentleman's mission, his goal is to try to grow some really huge bass. Well, he's got overabundant numbers of channel cat and white crappie, which that lake's plenty big for crappie, but they're kind of randomly scattered around the lake. So we got to figure out what we can do to concentrate them and build them a niche. They like to have cover and fairly deep water where they can congregate for 10 or 11 months out of the year. They only spend 2 or 3 weeks a year up in the shallows typically, and that's when they spawn. So fishing for them is not going to be easy because they're spread out. It's going to be kind of a random catch here and there. And there's some really good largemouth, but it looks to me like from our electrofishing surveys that there's 2 different kinds of behaviors of the largemouth bass. There's largemouth bass in that lake that have high relative weights. They're deep-bodied, and I'm not so sure that's just genetics. I think that's environmental as well because those are the couch potatoes. They've got the best areas in that lake to where they can go feed and not have to go very far and expend a lot of energy to eat. Then you've got a bunch of these 2 to 5 pound bass that are migrants. And you can tell by looking at them, they're long and lean, they're long distance runners. So my gut feeling about this lake, because I've only electrofished it twice and I'm studying it right now with the landowner who is fervent, to say the least. So we're going to learn a lot more about that lake, and I think that's what we're going to figure out. We're going to tag a bunch of fish. I don't know that we're going to radio tag any, but we're going to pit tag a bunch of them and just see where we can find them. We're in the same place this time as they were last time. So think about the different niches that you've got. I want to also let you know I got an email day before yesterday from Dr. Richard Anderson's daughter from Indianapolis. Dr. Anderson, 95 years old. He just passed away. And that guy, I'm proud to call him a friend. He and I became very good friends probably 20 years ago. He spoke at a couple of Pond Boss conferences, but Dr. Dick Anderson, through the cooperative fisheries, what was it? There was a cooperative for fisheries management in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Missouri, and he led that up. When he graduated from college, he was 22 years old, and he managed a state fish hatchery. So the guy was talented and gifted, and he's the guy that did the work to create our standard weight numbers. He and his students with this cooperative fisheries management department from the University of Missouri there, for our Missouri friends, we got several of them, including Fred. He's the one that did all the work. They weighed and measured over 300,000 bass over a 10 or 12 year span and came up with a mathematical model where we could look at standard weights, relative weights of largemouth bass. And we lost him at 95. I spent some time with him. He's been bedridden for about the last year, but I was there before he was bedridden. I spent a couple hours with him in a nursing home outside of Houston. And he and his wife been married like 73 years. That doesn't happen. And Joan, she's a doll as well. She's still there, and we're going to say goodbye to him, but we're going to say hello to his work over and over and over and over and over. There's Mark Dyer. Good to see Mark. All right, let's see. Jeremy Day, washouts. I'm putting in ryegrass, but what's best for spring and summer? Jeremy's down around Houston in the Montgomery area. Shaded area. If the area is shaded, Bermuda grass doesn't do quite as well, but if it's not shaded in that part of the planet, Bermuda grass is good. But you're also in a pretty good spot where you can do pretty well with St. Augustine because you get enough rain to support it. St. Augustine, you got to have a lot of water. A lot of water. All right, let's see what else we got going here. Deborah Corlew is eating freshly caught bluegill. Y'all ice fishing? Yeah, okay, there it is. Sweet. Ron Krisman, the smallmouth bass guru. My daughter wants to plant water lilies, but I'm afraid they will come invasive. She's also asking about copper coin plant pennywort. Pennywort is hello, Danny Mac. Chance Birch, good to see you, pal. The water lilies in your lake, I don't think they'll become invasive. Now, I tell you what I would do. Find an ornamental plant dealer and find some of the ornamental lilies. There's day bloomers and night bloomers, and there's different colors. I think that your lake it gets deep enough, fast enough, that lilies in your lake won't become invasive. Now, I'll tell you this. I have seen many, many, many lakes where fragrant white water lilies have become completely invasive. That's the bad news. The good news is they're pretty easy to control. Water hyacinth is absolutely a no-no. Don't do that. That's a floating plant that reproduces just way, way, way too fast, and that one will absolutely become a nightmare. Plus, I'm pretty sure they're not legal in Texas. Okay, pennywort. I'm okay with pennywort. Pennywort is kind of a viney type plant that grows around the edges. Now, it can get pretty dense and make access to the shoreline a little bit tough. And it's not that hard to manage either. You can manage that one. So I'd give a thumbs up to the water lilies, but I'd give a thumbs down to the hyacinth. Hyacinth is absolutely no way, Jose, do it. Don't do it. Ain't worth it. Let's see here. Happy birthday. Yeah, Ron Ardoin, birthday today. I don't know how old he is. I think he's like still in his early 30s. Good evening, Bob, and happy birthday, Ron. Hope you've had a great day. Now, if Bob, our pond boss, will get online. Get online where? I'm kind of online right now, so explain, dude. Who is the expert on relative weight calculations by species? I see conflicting information. You know, the relative weight calculations are pretty uniform. There's a lot of them out there. I've published through Pond Boss relative weight tables for white crappie, black crappie, bluegill, channel cat, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, walleye. I don't remember all of them, but I've published all those. So there are some uniform things going on out there for those relative weights. I'm not sure which one. Hello, R.E. Thompson. Good to see you. Glad you're able to join us tonight. That's good. You don't get to all the time. Yep, Ron Ardoin, the Boudin man. Yep, that's a little inside secret. The guys that were at the last Institute of Higher Pondology got poisoned by some Boudin. It was pretty fun. Pretty fun. Let's see. Danny Mac. I failed to find a grass or thin reed that can grow out to about a foot deep. There's not a lot of those that are there. Now, there are dwarf cattails. St. Augustine will definitely make it in the shade. Now, of course, it depends on how dense the shade is. It doesn't need much sunlight. It likes it, prefers it, but we got St. Augustine growing in our front yard under two giant live oak trees. So we've had to pour the water to it, but, I mean, we live in that part of the country where you are, you shouldn't have to do it. And I know this. You can go buy a few squares of that stuff because you're in the neck of the woods where the sod farms grow it down south of Houston, getting down toward Liverpool and Danbury and that area, Alvin. There's a whole bunch of farms down there. You ought to be able to get some of that pretty cheap. Joby Hout, what approach should I plan to do next year to eliminate curly leaf pondweed? Also, any generic chemicals that won't break the bank? You know, the thing about chemicals is there used to be some generic chemicals, but they're not labeled. So I stopped talking about generic chemicals. And because if they're not labeled and you use them against the label, then you're subject to a fine. And since I'm in the business, you know, as a consultant now, there's no chance I'm going to try to refer any kind of chemicals that that won't work. I tell you what you need to do though. Go to Aquaplant, the Texas A&M website about aquatic plants, and you can look at all your options there. Yeah, well, Bill's qualifying my statement about Ardoin poisoning people, which he's right. He didn't make the boudin, but the gumbo and the crawfish bread he made was excellent. It really, really was. Ron Ardoin is a work of art. We love that guy. I've known him now for several years. He owns a lake management company in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and if he's on tonight, I'm happy for him to put up his contact information. Let's see here. How deep will soft stem bulrush grow? You know, Mark, soft stem bulrush will grow in water 6 to 8 inches deep. The thing I like about soft stem bulrush, it grows along the edge, and it can grow out in the water, and it can be flooded from time to time. So if you've got a pond that fluctuates in water level and you need a little bit of a plant to grow, that's a pretty good one, actually. It helps hold those loose soils together. There you go. Let me see here. I'm going to keep scrolling here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Joby, yeah, I would go to Aquaplant. Take a look at that. Let's see here. Going back to John Dyer's question about who's the expert on relative weight calculation by species, I don't know that there's an expert. That's more of a math equation. And that's a factor of weighing and measuring tens of thousands of fish. All right, I'm going to scroll back up and make sure I'm not missing anything. I'm so glad that you guys are eating bluegill today. It's made my day. We're getting ready to have some weather here, which is going to pale in comparison to what you guys have had. Like Fred there in St. Louis. Good gosh, Fred. You've probably been stuck inside all the time the last few days. You guys have got like a foot of snow or better, it sounds like. All right, let's see. Oh, there's Buddy Floyd checking in. Buddy Floyd from Como, Mississippi. Buddy's one of those premier lake builders out there. He does a good job building lakes. Check him out. You guys friend him on Facebook after the show. Spring is coming. Crawfish are already in my pond. And anything hurt by adding a sack or two for the bass? No. Now, I wouldn't do it yet because you don't have any bass. But if you want to add a sack or two to help establish them, but if you've already seen them there, they're established. So stocking them does no harm, but may not be necessary. That's where I'll go with that. Jim Allen, I noticed that in the channel catfish WR papers that there are several approaches used. They varied, and researchers appeared to be looking for methods without resorting to the hundreds, thousands of samples. Make sure it's 1991 or newer research. Yeah, and I'll tell you something else that skews that is you've got farm-raised catfish and you've also got wild catfish. Well, we're going to weigh and measure a whole bunch of channel catfish over the next few months on this lake, 100-acre lake. When we did our electrofishing, there's Mark Hicks from North Carolina. Good to see Mark. We shocked up and weighed and measured like 40 catfish, which in an electrofishing survey where we spent maybe 6 hours electrofishing, that's a lot of catfish to catch. So I'm certainly not going to use one lake to try to come back in and redefine any relative weight numbers. I'm going to go with what we got. But looking at these catfish, comparing them to the channel catfish relative weight papers, they're in line, and everything I'm seeing is logical. Like for example, these channel catfish, I butchered some of them. I butchered probably 20 out of the 40 that we took out, and I had several pretty interesting observations. First of all, the meat was a little bit yellow, and they had yellow fat. Well, whenever they're being fed a good diet or they're feeding primarily on meat, the fat's white. Well, these fish, they're anything but that. That yellow fat comes from aquatic plants. Well, one of the things I'm figuring out about this lake, was down low, about 6 feet low, for a couple of years, 18 months anyway, and a bunch of terrestrial plants grew up in that exposed lake bottom. Then when it filled back up, a bunch of the leaves on those brand new willow trees and terrestrial plants, those leaves fell to the bottom, and I think the catfish are eating a bunch of that right now because the food chain is a little bit low. Not a lot of bluegills. There's some gizzard shad that are too big for the most part for those catfish to eat. I mean, some of them can eat some of them, but I'm seeing some interesting food habits. Out of the 20 that I cleaned, butchered, 4 of them had bluegills in their bellies. All of them had a bunch of mucky-looking junk where they were feeding off of decaying plant life, which is not typical. Okay, let's see here. Mark Dyer. Fluctuating water levels is absolutely what we've got. When you plant soft stem bulrush there in Nebraska, does it need to be submerged? Just at water's edge. Just plant it at water's edge. And really, all it needs is its feet to be wet. As long as its feet's wet, it will grow. Chuck Brinkman, how you doing, Bob? 3 inches of sleet and freezing temperatures. Pond looks like a big muddy margarita. I can see that. Chuck is out west of St. Louis and raising his kids right. He's got 2 girls, and those girls are absolute champions. They're being raised in the country and growing fish. Love the Brinkmans. So Jim Allen says it'll be interesting to see how it aligns with the new tool with the catfish worksheet. Sorry, guys, I haven't published this version until it's tested. We're testing it right now. And then I'll get that. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Bobby West, hanging out from St. Joe. Hey, Bobby, I was going to call you earlier, but I ran out of time. Do you have a logo for your ranch? If you do, send it to me. I want to incorporate that in the ad. Bobby West is the host. Bobby and Jacob, Bobby and his son Jacob West own West Haven Ranch north of St. Joe, and that's our new home. I say new home. We've done it there, 3 times, I think. 2 or 3 times, where we've had the Institute of Higher Pondology. They got this great 15-acre lake. They've got beautiful facilities, rustic, down home. They got a good place for our classroom. We cook outside. We have a great time. And look for an ad in Pond Boss. The next Institute of Higher Pondology is going to be in May. And we don't have anybody signed up yet because we just picked the dates. I talked to Bobby a couple days ago. And we're going to have one in May. I think it's like May 23-ish through there somewhere. And then another one in October. So look for an ad. And if anybody's interested in finding out about it, send me an email at info@pondboss.com and I'll get you the intel on that. And we'll talk about it because it's truly gaining legs. The curriculum is good. We're doing an ongoing study of their lake. And it's really, really, really fun. And there's several guys on here that have been there, that have been to the ranch, and that have participated in the Institute. And it's well worth it, I promise. Jeremy Day, what are your top 3 plants I should consider that flower? Lotus, avoid lotus at all costs. Way too invasive. There's Mark Dyer chiming in on it because Mark was at the one in October. We had a great time, didn't we, buddy? A bonus week dragonfly nursery. To help with mosquitoes. You know the way you've built your lake with your habitat, that's a pretty good dragonfly nursery as it is. Dragonfly nymphs, they like to live in rocks. So if you want to add some riprap, they love that. But I would avoid lotus. But look at plants like Louisiana iris. Look at that. Look at arrowhead. That's a favorite. Another one is, I've got it pictured in my mind. I'm not thinking the name of it. It looks like a kind of a cane, but it's segmented. And a little bit, not very big. It grows fairly tall. Spatterdock's a pretty good one. That's kind of like a water lily. That's a good one. So look at some bog plants. That's what you need to look at, Jeremy Day. some bog plants. Look up bog plants. And there used to be a grower supplier at Brookshire, Texas, west of Houston. I'm not sure they're there anymore. But look up Stonefly Nursery as well. Haven't met those guys, but I'm hearing some good things about them. All right, let me see what we got going on here. Holy cow, it's already almost 7 o'clock. How time flies when we're talking ponds and fish and stuff. All right, I'm going to scroll down here. Let's see. Yep. This summer, looking to clear up the water, who in my area would you suggest I call? Finally getting enough grass around the pond, so I think it will be finally time to knock out the suspending. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's a good question. So you guys spend a little time on the Pond Boss resource guide. Go to pondboss.com, click on the resource guide. And if you can't find somebody, email me, and I'll see if I can dial in on somebody locally to help you figure out what you need to do. Bill Sharon was there. Excellent facility. Yeah, okay, there you go. Mike Cadrell, my good friend Walter, owns and runs Windmill Grill and Saloon. Windmill Grill and Saloon in St. Joe? Really? I've not heard of that. Duck Potato's a good one, Mark Dyer. Windmill Grill and Saloon. I can't believe I don't know about that place there in St. Joe. Send us the contact information on that, Mike, if you don't mind. If you got a few minutes, just email it to info@pondboss.com and I'll get it. I'd like to give them a call and talk to them. See what all they got cooking, so to speak. Something else I wanted to talk about to you guys, throw a few questions out there. Matter of fact, let's pause and do a commercial. What do you think? Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. And every magazine is full of nuggets. That was one of my favorite descriptions from one of our subscribers years ago. He called me one time and he says, "Hey man, I just want you to know that I get nuggets out of each Pond Boss." Well, that made my day, and it also influenced the way I think about how I produce Pond Boss and how I talk to the writers about what they write. So we like to get some information out there that you guys can actually use timely based on that season when the magazine comes out. And this next issue, because of the holidays, no, not because of the holidays, because I didn't manage it right, I was late. And so the magazine's going to be late. It's finished. We're proofreading it. It goes to the printer tomorrow. So it ought to start hitting your mailboxes here in the next 10 days. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Purina Mills, they're a sponsor. I love Purina Mills. They're makers of some really, really, really good fish foods. So check out Purina Mills. Aquamax lineup of fish foods, really good. Texas Hunter products. I talked to Cody with Texas Hunter today. I love their customer service. Very responsive. I don't care what it is. They're highly responsive. Their products are excellent. They're outstanding. And you know what? I've not really talked much about American Sportfish Hatchery. They're a sponsor of Pond Boss as well. The thing about American Sportfish Hatchery is they're very creative with how they manage lakes. And they're really astute at tuning in and listening to what the landowners want and then using their vast resources to create good management strategies. They got a fish farm near Montgomery, Alabama. They've got one in western Alabama. They're the trademark, the F1 tiger bass. So they were the first ones to hit the market with tiger bass. Holy cow, that was probably in the late 80s, early 90s when they first started doing that. And they're doing a good job with that. They raise copper-nosed bluegill, red-eared sunfish. They grow a fair amount of threadfin shad. They produce some catfish as well. So they're producers and they're service providers. So check out American Sportfish Hatchery as well. And they got a footprint in Texas. They bought my pond management division of my company back in 2019. So they've got a footprint in Texas, and they're working on lakes in Texas, from Texas to Alabama. Easy Docks of Texas. David Schneiderman. Haven't seen him on here tonight, but he watches the show quite a bit. He does floating docks. Need to check him out. Trip Grain. Met him through the Texas Outdoor Writers Association. He is a humor writer. You can tell it by his nickname, Bungus. Bungus, and already forgot the other ones. John Harson, throw me that really good one. Can't wait. If you know how to type. Jeremy Day got 4 wood duck boxes up. Anything we do to also help attack them. Attack them? Maybe attach them? 4 wood duck boxes up. Anything we can do to also help attack them. We have a creek close and see some every day. Be sure you got sawdust in those wood duck boxes. Pine sawdust. Pine shavings. Make sure you got like 5 or 6 inches of pine shavings in those wood duck boxes. And you put them up at the right time because they're getting ready to find those nest boxes. They'll pair off and find those boxes, and they'll do it. Anything wrong with putting brown top millet or Japanese millet? No, there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And Jeremy bought his fish from American Sport Fish. Super nice people with good pricing. Their pricing is really fair. It really is. Bill Cody just published the Pond Boss 2023 articles and index for issues on the forum. Bill Cody's really good about that. We love us some Bill Cody from Melinta, Ohio. Attract. No, the wood ducks are either going to be there or not. And the biggest attractant that you can provide wood ducks are those boxes. Because they're definitely cavity spawners. They're going to do that. Nothing wrong with brown top millet or Japanese millet. Nothing wrong with that at all. Hey, Gene Jensen. Good to see you, pal. Gene and I met at Richmond Mill Lake. We brought him on as a fishing guide. And if you haven't seen his video collection, he's one of those few guys out there that I've ever met that were able to begin to make a living off of YouTube with his fishing videos. So check out Gene Jensen, follow him, and see what all he does. Gene Jensen is a gentleman, a scholar, a great father, a wonderful husband, and I'm glad to call him a friend. So here's to Gene. I never saw him drink wine. Virgil, going to focus on feeding this year. Is it imperative that I have more than one feeder in my pond? Will perch come to feed? Perch will, but it's going to take them a little while to figure out. What they'll do is they'll watch the bluegill come to feed, and then after a handful of perch start coming, more will come. So they're a little bit slow to train, but they will train. Now, not all your perch are going to come like all the bluegill will. But, yeah, I'd feed them. Do you need to have more than one feeder? Your lake is about... Well, here's what the feed companies recommend, or feeder companies recommend. They recommend one feeder for every 3 to 5 acres. Now, you're in southeastern Iowa, Virgil, so I'm going to tell you 2 feeders is probably good for you. You need to budget that they spit out about 50 pounds of feed per month. In Iowa, I would bet that the best feeding months are going to start about the 1st of April. I start presenting the feed toward the end of March because that might entice the perch a little more quickly. And then they're going to feed till probably about Thanksgiving, maybe a little bit later. So that's the way I'd tackle that deal. Well, let's see here. Wow, we're all the way up to 22 viewers. Quality audience. Quality, not quantity. Peyton Igo from Shreveport, Louisiana. Happy New Year, sir. 2012 is looking good for managing a lot of new ponds. Good. Sinking all the Christmas trees accumulated after Christmas. Right bow, huh? How do you feel about liming in water temperatures? That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Lime it when you're ready. Now's a good time because it's going to take a little while for that lime to dissolve into the water. But I think liming from now until maybe the 1st of March is a good time to do it. Okay, let's see here. John Harson, I'm going to read that here in a minute. Jeremy, in my area, I'm still feeding once a day at noon. Is it too cold? Should I cut them off till spring? I don't think I would because down around Houston, you're only going to get a handful of days where they won't feed. You know, and the next few days might be some of those days, but I don't think I'd cut them off. I tell you what I'd do is I'd cut them back and try to get out there when the feeder goes off and just see what kind of activity you've got. Let that dictate to you whether you should keep filling the feeders or not. John Arson, my brother-in-law, had a half-acre pond that was dug 20 years ago. I stocked it up very well. It was full of very nice fish. He started raising show hogs several years ago. He's built onto his barn a couple of times. He decided to break the pond dam and drain the pond to build another breeding barn. We broke the dam slowly to catch the fish to relocate them. Only thing that was in the pond was about 100 pounds of shad. I'm guessing the pig from breeding operation ran into the pond and killed everything. Well, the shad would be the first fish to die from that. So what I'm going to tell you happened, and just here's my guess. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what I think. I think that when he had pig poo, that killed his fish, and then there's an external source of fish, and shad would be the ones that could come in and take over. And it makes pretty good sense because gizzard shad are bottom feeders. They love to eat whatever that is that runs into the pond from that breeding operation. But I know this, that when the fish kill happened, the shad went first because they're almost like the parakeet in the coal mine. They're almost like that bird in the coal mine. They're one of the weakest species, and once they get hit with something that's going to take them out, they're going to go. No, shad, shad, okay, I read where shad was the last. No, shad are not the last to die. They're the first to die. Shad, and I am very confident with that answer. I've watched it happen over and over and over and over. So, shad die before catfish. So here's kind of the order of the way fish die when water chemistry goes to heck like that. Shad are first. Then right after them are going to be the biggest bass. Then after them are going to be the medium-sized bass and the biggest bluegills. Then after that, it's going to be the biggest catfish. And then after that, it's going to be the medium-sized catfish. And then after those are all gone, if the water's still toxic and still killing fish, then it's going to get the little fish like the little bluegills and little bass, little red ears. Those are going to be the last ones to die. They were big shad with the big black dot on them. That pretty well names all of them. Yep. Bullheads are not quite as likely to die. As a matter of fact, if you've got bullheads will be the last ones to die. Bullheads have a way to be able to stick their nose down in the mud and avoid a lot of the bad stuff that happens. Jeremy Day, do you ever advertise your Facebook Live in Pond Boss? I put it in Ask the Boss on occasion. Matter of fact, I think I've got it in Ask the Boss coming up. What's really weird is I can remember almost every pond I've ever looked at, but when I write something, I get in the zone and I write it and I never remember it. But I'm pretty sure I've said something about Facebook Live and Ask the Boss in this next upcoming issue of Pond Boss. So there you go. You guys throw a few more questions out here if you would. Let me scroll down here just a little bit. If it'll let me. Okay, bullhead lass. Yep. Yeah, some about 12 inches long. That's about right. Gizzard shad can grow to be, I've seen them 18 inches long. I've seen them way over 2 pounds, 2¼ pounds. Gizzard shad can get really, really big. But they're highly vulnerable to water quality. They're the canary in the coal mine. That's it. The canary in the coal mine. I don't know what I said a while ago, but it's the canary in the coal mine. I want to talk about bald eagles for a minute. Yeah, John couldn't believe that the fish were gone. The only way that happens is if the water got deadly toxic for long enough to eradicate all the fish. Now, one thing always, here's a law of nature. This is God's law, not mine or yours. Nature will not allow a void, and it doesn't like a bounty. So if you get too much of something, something happens. If you don't have enough, something happens. So when you don't have enough, then the fish replenish themselves. But when you have a 100% fish kill, like what had to have happened with this lake, then it's going to be the next species that makes its way into the pond that are going to be the ones to be able to do it. I wonder how shad got back in. The only way shad got back in was to either be put in there or swim in there. And if there's no runoff to it, well, there's got to be runoff to it, or the pig poop wouldn't have gotten in it unless he pumped it in there. You know, hello, Tim Stewart, checking in from Florida. Mark Dyer, up north, ice season can be a great time to have. Yeah, that's a great time to do it. Yeah, this is especially when you guys have ice. You can start adding structure put it on top of the ice, place it, drill some holes, anchor it, so when the ice starts to melt, it doesn't move around. Because when ice melts, it doesn't always stay in the same place. Being from Texas, I didn't know that till I got to go see it firsthand in upstate New York. Bald eagles. This ranch that I'm helping work on the lake, about an hour from here, they've got a mated pair of bald eagles, looks like, and the landowner has seen the male and the female, and there's a juvenile that he's seen, because they're not, juveniles they don't have a white head until they're mature. But I'll always remember, I got a couple of stories. I convinced a landowner, 15 years ago, to stock a bunch of tilapia into a 125-acre lake in East Texas. And he spent quite a bit of money on it, and I told him they were going to die in the winter, which they did. But he was helping with a learning curve for me. He just didn't quite know how much of a learning curve it was. But what happens is those tilapia reproduce like crazy. The babies embed themselves in algae, and they feed on that. And they take that algae, turn it into flesh, and then other fish eat them, whether it's big bluegills, small bluegills, medium-sized bass, or whatever. Then in the fall, whatever's left gets really, really sluggish, and the bass just gorge themselves on those little tilapia. Well, then when they finally die, it's the ones that die are those that are too big to have been eaten by something in the lake. And boy, when that happened in that lake in East Texas, there were 6 or 8 bald eagles that figured it out and came and fed on them. And they loved it, and the landowner loved it. Another story I was going to tell you. Okay, Tim Stewart, I see your questions. Danny Mack says fish eggs could survive to hatch, accidentally killed our koi, then there was a rebirth of babies. Huh, okay. I can't debate that at all, and I'm not going to. I don't necessarily believe it, but I can't debate it. That, birds bring eggs in and all that stuff. Long time ago, probably the late 90s, early 2000s, I got a call from a friend of mine, biologist up in Colorado, Mike Mitchell. And Mike told me a story. He says, I helped a really wealthy landowner renovate 2 miles of trout stream at about $1 million a mile. That's a lot. And he said 2 years afterwards, they had grown some trout, 6 or 7 pounds, and this guy was loving it. He said this landowner, mega wealthy landowner, called me about 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I was getting ready to go to church, and he called me up. He says, "Hey, Mike, a bald eagle just caught about a 3-pound trout and drug it out on the shore, and it's eating it." Mike said, "Man, the hair on the back of my neck stood up." He says, "I could not wait for the next comment because, because we'd renovated that trout stream for the trout." And he said, the landowner, and then he said this, and it just made my day. He said, I remember coming here when I was a kid, and we had eagles nesting on our ranch, and then they went away. And now they're finally back, and this is a fledgling eagle that caught this trout and drug it out, and it's eating it. Can we get some more trout? So when the moral of that story is there's so many pieces of nature that I think when we just kind of sit back and think about it, that we can have some affection for. Yeah, that trout was probably worth $50, But knowing that those bald eagles are raising there in the national bird, and being able to see that aspect of nature, what's that worth? So I thought that was a pretty cool story. Okay, let me back up here. Tim Stewart from South Florida. The bee man. He's in the bee business. He leases bees. You need to rent some bees? He's your guy. Tim Stewart. He used to name his company Rent-A-Bee. Lots of different birds snacking on my fish in Florida. Ospreys, herons, kingfishers, and hingas. The whole 9 yards except no bald eagles yet. That doesn't surprise me. I've seen bald eagles along the eastern seaboard. I just haven't seen that many in the eastern seaboard. What to do about aeration stirring up sediment? Get your diffusers off the bottom. If you can set them on a concrete slab, or if you can set them on top of a bucket, get your diffusers up and it won't stir the sediments up so bad. Sean Arson, thank you very much. Yep, you're welcome. It's what I know. I'm pretty adamant about some of that. When I turn my aerators back on in spring, do I need to slowly ramp them back up? I'm assuming I do. I would do that just out of an abundance of caution. You probably don't need to, but because the reason you need to ramp them up slowly is in order to minimize the risk of taking toxic water below a thermocline and shoving it to the top. So I think just out of an abundance of caution, just do it. Just do that. And do it when your water temperature is in the mid to upper 50s. Jason Nipstad has put up some amazing videos of shad piled up in warmer water and bath. You know what? I know Jason Nipstad. I've electrofished his lake. I've helped him come up with ways to stock it. It doesn't surprise me because they really didn't have a really good budget to be able to stock that lake right. But the threadfin shad have just gone crazy. There's Ron, birthday boy Arduan. We were just talking about you earlier, dog. Glad you're checking in. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. You don't cook the boudin, but your other food tastes good too. Happy birthday. I tell everybody in your early 30s. I don't know if you want to tell them how old you really are, but that's on you, dude. How long does it take lime to dissolve? Well, okay. Hey, there's a science question for us. Listen to this. Depends on how much alkalinity the water needs. So it's going to absorb and dissolve as much as it needs as fast as it can. So like in water that's really acidic, that doesn't have any alkalinity, it's like if you take a dry sponge and you drop it on a puddle of water, that sponge is going to soak it up fast. But if the sponge is already soaked up all the water it can get, it's going to take longer. So like in your lake, if your pH is say 5.3, 5.5, if you put a couple of tons per acre, then it's going to take a little bit longer. I mean, it's not going to take quite as long. When your pH is low, it's going to dissolve quicker. Plus, it also depends on how big the particles are. So what I tell people to do is use ag lime. That's calcium carbonate that is about the consistency of cornmeal. And if you pile it up in piles around the bottom of the lake, it's going to absorb what it needs. It's going to take it 2 months probably to reach 40 or 50 parts per million. I bet you. There's Scott Schilling checking in from northern Indiana, surf and turf for dinner. Venison loin back strap and walleye. Dude, that's pretty good. Ron, you told him your real age, 52. Dude, I had your back on that. I told him you're early 30s. What's better than a cake and cheaper than a Friday night date? Pond Boss. Hey, $35 a year. There it is right there. Niches. Need to check it out. Okay, happy birthday to our good friend Ron. All right, I'm going to scroll up, see if we get more questions, and we'll start wrapping this thing up. Go turn on the TV and get ready to put my laptop in my lap maybe that's why they call it a laptop, and start reviewing the January-February issue of Pond Boss, which is 4 weeks late. You know, if I worked for somebody else, I'd be fired because I missed the deadline really bad. But since I own it, kind of thinking about firing myself. But then I'd have to hire a replacement. I don't know about that. Jeremy Day, we got a ton of rain also. Does that matter on how fast it dissolves? Yeah, it does. The more water you have, it's going to dissolve it at the rate that it can anyway. So the more the water is circulated, the more it moves, the faster it's going to dissolve. Other than that, it's going to take a little bit longer. So, Virgil, is testing water once annually sufficient? What main parameters should I pay attention to? Virgil, in your case, I think checking the water, testing the water once a year is good. I like to use the soil sciences lab at Texas A&M. The main parameters, let's talk about water chemistry. That's a good question. Alkalinity is the number one thing to look at. What's your alkalinity? As long as it's above 40, you're good. As long as it's under 150, you're good. I must be getting sleepy. I've been sleeping outside, by the way. It got kind of cold last night. I like sleeping outside. We have a screened-in porch, and it takes a little bit getting used to breathe 22-degree air in your nostrils, but it works out. Tim Stewart's telling Ron he's ancient, which compared to Tim Stewart he is. but Ron, compared to me, I'm like double ancient. So, what parameters should I pay attention to? pH, all that is a measurement. pH gives you a clue as to whether or not you need to look further into the water chemistry. So a pH of 7 is neutral. pH below 7 is acidic. A pH above that is more basic. So the way that works is it's logarithmic. So each number from pH of 7 to 6 is 10 times more acid than a pH of 7. pH of 5 is 10 times more acidic than a pH of 6, which means it's 100 times more acidic than a pH of 7. So there you go. The other ones, I would do the Texas. And when you guys do the Texas A&M water test, do the well water test. Tell them it's for aquaculture. It's $40. Do the $40 one. Ron can still outrun Tim. I don't know, dude. You never have any bees chasing you, and Tim has them chasing him all the time. I don't know how fast a honeybee can fly, but you got to outrun it. But Tim knows how to do that. So the other things I look at, I like to do that $40 test because if I see something with the alkalinity that bugs me, or if I see something with the pH that bugs me, then I start digging into the other cations and anions. So I'm looking at calcium, I'm looking at sulfate, I'm looking at phosphate, I'm looking at the different parameters that test is for. To answer your question, once a year is probably enough unless you get a lot of flushing. And what I typically tell people is when you first build a lake or you first buy a property with a lake on it, check it 4 times a year the first year. Just check it quarterly and compare. And once you start to see patterns, then do it twice a year. And when those patterns are consistent, do it once a year. And the reason I say that is because water quality is the first thing we always look at when we start trying to analyze problems. We want to rule out water quality. Happy water, remember that. If the water's not happy, nothing else matters. And a lot of times we can tell by looking at chemistry as to how happy the water is. All right, let's see here. What we got here? Scott, who has a pond management company in North Indiana. Your legs are too short, Ron, in the cane. He's going to pole vault past you with that cane. I got in touch with the Indiana Board of Animal Health, and Kenny will have pre-import documents approved within 30 days for any fish that he's got, including sawguy. Come here and snooze outside. 17 degrees now and dropping. Nah, probably won't. Out here, well, you know what though? When I woke up yesterday morning, it was 21 degrees. And that's pretty cold. But, you know, I've got the sheet, then a thin blanket, then a comforter on top of that. So I generate enough heat from my pretty big body that I can stay pretty warm. Bob, when are you coming to Florida? I don't know when I'm coming to Florida. You know, the thing about me is I don't plan anything to speak of. The things that happen to me are spontaneous. I'll get a call from somebody that says, hey, can you come to Florida? I'll say, sure, when do you want to go? So that's one of the fun things about what I do and how I do it is I don't really plan things out very far. So I don't know when I'm coming to Florida. I know I don't have anything on the agenda right now, but as soon as somebody calls me and says, hey, I need some help, which, you know, a guy did call me. Let me go back and check him out. Sean Harson's got 12 inches of snow and more Friday. Well, you know, you're kind of in the middle of winter. Yeah, so Ron's going to feed some of that world-class boudin that he brought to the Institute of Hydropondology. So, hey, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. We've been going almost an hour. We've got 56 minutes under our belts. So, as always, I appreciate you guys checking in. We got 27 viewers right now with 100 comments. That means everybody's participating, and that's one of Josh Milchewski. Hold up, wait, I'm going to get it right. 4 degrees and snowing in Colorado. Love it. Josh Milchewski. Did I get it right? Hey, you're going to be in the next issue of Pond Boss there, Josh. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to click end live video, but I'm going to thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight. This is the highlight of the week, I promise, getting to hang out with you guys. So you guys take care, and I will see you next Tuesday night, which I'm not sure where I'll be, probably here. So let's until then, adios for now.